Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Appreciate you listening, whether it's on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. So by now, you have heard of the commencement speech given by Kansas City Chief kicker Harrison Butker, a Westminster Atlanta Schools grad. He who also attended Georgia Tech, having graduated there, playing football for the Yellow Jackets before heading to the National Football League, where he played for the Carolina Panthers and now, of course, is with the three-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And today and throughout the United States, we're talking about Harrison Butker and his commencement speech at Benedictine College, which is just near Wichita, Kansas. We're talking about the commencement speech that he gave instead of the graduating class. This is a field goal kicker for a three-time Super Bowl champion football team invited to speak, give a commencement speech, and he decided to make the moment about himself and not the graduating class. It's a roughly 20-minute commencement speech. We'll skim through the parts that I think are most topical, given that this is a political show and podcast. And why, you ask? Well, because Harrison Butker decided at a college commencement address to weigh in politically, socially, air quotes, morally. I, for one, always enjoy when we get preached to from a good-looking, athletically gifted white male about the way we ought to all live our lives. And make no mistake, he is good-looking. Why are the sanctimonious, pious, conservative white men so good-looking? He rails on the president. He rails on Pride Month. He rails on working women? Yeah. Again, Harrison Butker made a commencement speech for college graduates, not about the college graduates, but about himself and his worldview. I suppose maybe his anger at the direction of the Catholic Church. He is a devout Catholic, and this is a religious school. He even made some questionable comments about Judaism and the death of Jesus Christ. Oh boy, there's a lot to weigh. There's a lot to weigh in, and this is just a field. And listen, I'm not minimizing that he is just a field goal kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he is, in the big scheme of things, just a field goal kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs. And now he is the most talked about Kansas City Chief, a Kansas City Chiefs team with a franchise-winning quarterback, MVP, Travis Kelce, tight end, dating Taylor Swift. What does Taylor Swift have to think? Oh, the Swifties coming for Harrison Butker too. Wow. And yet today we're talking about the guy who kicks the extra point or the three-point field goals when necessary. All that those college students did to get to that point to honor their graduation, and to quote Peyton Manning,
we're talking about our idiot kicker who ran his mouth off.
So. Idiot kicker. Let's listen in as Harrison Butker addresses the graduating class at Benedictine College in Kansas.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, I would like to start off by congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today. I'm sure your high school graduation was not what you had imagined, and most likely, neither was your first couple years of college. By making it to this moment through all the adversity thrown your way from COVID, I hope you learned the important lessons that suffering in this life is only temporary. As a group, you witnessed firsthand how bad leaders who don't stay in their lane can have a negative impact on society. It is through this lens that I want to take stock of how we got to where we are and where we want to go, as citizens, and yes, as Catholics.
40 seconds in, and he's already railing on politicians and COVID responses. Wow. Here we go. Strap in, kids.
One last thing before I begin. I want to be sure to thank President Minnis and the board for their invitation to speak. When President Minnis first reached out a couple of months ago, I had originally said no. You see, last year I gave the commencement address at my alma mater, Georgia Tech, and I felt that one graduation speech was more than enough, especially for someone who isn't a professional speaker. But of course, President Minnis used his gift of persuasion and spoke to the many challenges you all faced throughout the COVID fiasco and how you missed out on so many milestones the rest of us older people have taken for granted.
Okay, so Benedictine College President Stephen Minnis and the board asked him to speak. He said initially no. He just did a commencement at Georgia Tech recently. Wonder what he said at that. And then the president reapproached him with but these graduates, 485 of them, didn't get to have a high school commencement because of COVID, or as Butker calls it, the COVID fiasco. And I guess he forgot who was president during the COVID fiasco. And then somehow the angle was, well, let's address this in the COVID era lens. And Harrison Butker says, I got you, fam. Let's continue.
While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally.
Is he, however, selling Bibles, I'm wondering, Mr. Butker, with his name affixed, and for campaign purposes and for defense fund purposes, is he selling Bibles, sir? Would you care to address that? No, I guess not. Let's just move on.
He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice.
It might blow his mind to know that there are many Catholics who are pro-choice. Hell, I just did a simple Google search, and the first thing that comes up, historically, the Catholic Church is opposed to abortion, but the poll found, this is in the Georgia Recorder, by the way, 73% Catholics of color, Black, Asian, Native American, and multiracial Americans support the right to have an abortion, followed by 62% of white Catholics and 57% of Hispanic Catholics. Oops.
He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up.
By the way, we are only 2 minutes into a 20-minute speech, and Harrison Butker, just barely in passing, by the way. Oh, yeah, congrats, by the way, graduates. Let's talk about COVID and Catholicism and this president. Wow. Not even 2.5 minutes in, and this isn't about the graduates and their futures and advice for them moving forward and congratulations. What you've done is amazing. Nope. Let's dive right into super conservative, male-centric, Catholic religious dogma.
The difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it.
Accepting your lane and staying in it. Did Laura Ingraham tell him to shut up and kick the ball the way she did LeBron James? Because I believe Laura Ingraham wanted LeBron James to stay in his lane. Any word from Laura Ingraham? Nothing? Can't find anything from Laura Ingraham on Harrison Butker here. That's odd.
As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even within the church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. There even was an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and as an apostate, when he died, is seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron said in his review of the film, "It was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless." Our Catholic faith has always been countercultural. Our Lord, along with countless followers, were all put to death for their adherence to her teachings. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Tyranny.
We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail.
That is Harrison Butker railing against an anti-Semitism law. By the way, Jewish people have entered the chat. In an op-ed in the Kansas City Star, Yvette Walker responded, "Actually, the one thing Butker said that went against Catholic tradition was an inference that the Jewish people killed Jesus Christ when Butker blasted a bill condemning anti-Semitism. The church long has held that Jews could not be held collectively accountable since the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s. In 2011, Pope Benedict XVI affirmed that this in his personal reflection, Jesus of Nazareth, From the Entrance into Jerusalem to the Resurrection, Volume 2, and wrote that there is no basis in Scripture for blaming Jews." We are now only 4 minutes into his 20-minute speech, about a fifth of the way in, where he has yet to really address the 485 graduates, their education, their futures, going into the world, taking on the world. No, this is his super fringy religious conservative dogma 4 minutes into his 20-minute speech at a commencement address honoring the 485 graduates at Benedictine College. And he's not done. No, strap in the LGBTQ plus friends and allies. He's coming for us too. Pride Month. Yep, got to rail on Pride Month. Just weeks before it, by the way. And don't think you're immune from his barbs either, career-driven women. Oh, no. Homemaking is your career. At least it is for his wife. And that's fine. That's her choice. That's her choice. Anyway, we have more of Harrison Butker's speech when the Ron Show returns on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. Let me, by the way, thank ardent listener Calvin, who messaged me earlier this week telling me how much he loves the show. Appreciate that. Going to buy me a cup of coffee, which he says he can do virtually, because I've pointed this out. You can do this virtually. RonShowATL.com if you'd like to support the show. Listen, this is an out-of-pocket expense for yours truly. You don't hear me putting commercials into my segments because, well, for one, I have like 5 other jobs. I'm a real estate agent. I'm on my softball leagues board. Let's see. I got so many things going on that hitting the streets and selling advertising for this show is just something that I do not have the time for right now. And maybe one of these days when this thing like really takes off and blows up, I'll be able to just, hire somebody or have somebody do it on the side. That's all fine and well. It airs on the American One Radio app, AmericanOneRadio.com. They do have some commercial inventory through there, but within the segments, I just don't have time to sell commercials. So I ask my listeners, if you don't mind, hey, you want to help out? Maybe it's just, help me out with things like it cost me to have a Dropbox account because I've got to get this audio stored and shipped and sent to ProgressiveVoices.com and to American One Radio, and then get it on the podcast. I guess the point is there are just some expenses that come about, and any little bit you want to offer to help out, it can be as simple as paying for my Dunkin' run when I go to make a Dunkin' run later in the day. You can do that on the donate tab at RonShowATL.com. So today I decided I wanted to dive into the Harrison Butker commencement speech at Benedictine College, 485 graduates, and we've gotten 4 minutes and 15 seconds in, and he thanked them, or no, I'm sorry. He congratulated them and then stepped right into his super conservative religious political dogma, making it all about him and his worldview And I get it. He's at a Catholic school, and so he's trying to rein in the entire Catholic Church from the Pope on down, bringing it back to the 18th century. So let's listen more to Kansas City Chief field goal kicker Harrison Butker, a Westminster, Atlanta, and Georgia Tech grad, making us all proud with this 18th century worldview.
But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order, and it starts with our leaders. The bishops and priests appointed by God as our spiritual fathers must be rightly ordered. There's not enough time today for me to list all the stories of priests and bishops misleading their flocks, but none of us can blame ignorance anymore and just blindly proclaim that that's what Father said.
Wait a minute. Is he going to talk about the many and varied child sexual abuse scandals within the Catholic Church? No, of course he's not.
Because sadly, many priests we are looking to for leadership are the same ones who prioritize their hobbies or even photos with their dogs and matching outfits for the parish directory.
Can we just talk about, by the way, how he, again, didn't want to talk about the Catholic sex abuse scandals over the decades and centuries even? No, he's mad because there were bishops who took photos with their dogs in matching outfits? That's his beef?
It's easy for us laymen and women to think that in order for us to be holy, that we must be active in our parish and try to fix it. Yes, we absolutely should be involved in supporting our parishes, but we cannot be the source for our parish priests to lean on to help with their problems. Just as we look at the relationship between a father and his son, so too should we look at the relationship between a priest and his people. It would not be appropriate for me to always be looking to my son for help when it is my job as his father to lead him. St. Jose Maria Escriva states that priests are ordained to serve and should not yield to temptation to imitate lay people, but to be priests through and through. Tragically, so many priests revolve much of their happiness from the adulation they receive from their parishioners, and in searching for this, they let their guard down and become overly familiar. This undue familiarity will prove to be problematic every time, because as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt.
No, he didn't quote Taylor Swift in this screed. Oh my God, the Swifties are coming for you, Harrison. Okay, so let me tell you, again, this is a 20-minute speech, and I'm not going to give you the entire thing because he gets into some real nitpickery about the inner mechanisms of Catholicism. Suffice to say, though, he's unhappy that the church has in any way modernized, basically.
It seems that the only time you hear from your bishops is when it's time for the annual appeal, whereas we need our bishops to be vocal about the teachings of the church, setting aside their own personal comfort and embracing their cross. Our bishops are not politicians, but shepherds. So instead of fitting in the world by going along to get along, they too need to stay in their lane and lead.
Said the guy who kicks field goals for the Kansas City Chiefs at a commencement address at Benedictine College. Continue moving ahead.
I say all of this not from a place of anger, as we get the leaders we deserve. But this does make me reflect on staying in my lane and focusing on my own vocation and how I can be a better father and husband and live in the world but not be of it. Focusing on my vocation while praying and fasting for these men will do more for the church than me complaining about her leaders. Because there seems to be so much confusion coming from our leaders, there needs to be concrete examples for people to look to in places like Benedictine, a little Kansas college built high on a bluff above the Missouri River, are showing the world how an ordered, Christ-centered existence is the recipe for success.
And that's all fine and well, man. If that's what you're about, that is fantastic. By all means, please do so. But you were invited to give a commencement address. And again, I can't sit here and speak to the conversation that you and the college president had about what should be in the address. Harrison Butker mentioned the president appealing to him to come give an address that he initially had turned down the invitation for because this graduating class is the graduating class that had to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, likely didn't have a high school graduation, as we've heard so often in some other circumstances, what with the pro-Palestinian protests, et cetera, and so on. But this guy's gone full-on medieval which I suppose is easy to embrace when you are a handsome, heterosexual, athletically gifted white male who makes a lot of money occasionally kicking footballs in stadiums full of people who pay good money to watch him do that. It's a position, a comfortable position of privilege for him to speak from. And again, I know that that's only recency for him since he graduated, 2016? He's been playing in the NFL for less than a decade. That's only a portion of his life. And I have to tell you, going to Westminster is not cheap. So it doesn't seem like he suffered much coming up either. That's neither here nor there, though. I'm just gobsmacked that you see who's sharing this commencement speech and the articles about it on social media, right? You're paying attention to this, right? It's mostly white men who also don't have to have Pride Months to celebrate their existence or worry about having a career because of their gender or getting pregnant. This is The Ron Show. Back in a minute.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Here we are in an election cycle. We've got a former president on trial for paying hush money to a porn star. Actually, that's election interference, I guess, technically, because there's business dealings, and that, of course, was in the run-up to the 2016 election. What else is going on? My God, we're losing Red Lobsters all over the place. And meanwhile,
We're talking about our idiot kicker who ran his mouth off.
because President Joe Biden is a Catholic and is also pro-choice, the majority of American Catholics are, because of the COVID-19 response. I guess he's talking about Anthony Fauci, who I believe is Catholic as well, right? He's going to, later on in this commencement speech, which we'll give you more of, sorry, if it's already made you nauseous, I apologize, because he has a problem with things like Pride Month. Gay Pride Month is what he's talking about. And women having careers versus being homemakers first. More on Harrison Butker here.
In a deliberate movement to embrace traditional Catholic values, Benedictine has gone from just another liberal arts school with nothing to set it apart to a thriving beacon of light and a reminder to us all that when you embrace tradition, success, worldly and spiritual, will follow. I am certain the reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him.
Can I just say, as an out gay white male in the United States, I don't think I'll live to see an era where we won't need a gay Pride Month. And honestly, when humanity gets to that point, I'll celebrate it. I won't be alive, obviously, but I would celebrate it. Yeah, the fact that we wouldn't need to have a Pride Month where millions of LGBTQ plus Americans and citizens around the world actually celebrate coming up in a world of ostracization, where children are literally more prone to try, if not succeed, at taking their own life because of their sexuality and because of the anti-gay bullying that surrounds them, not just on school buses, in classrooms, on playgrounds, but societally as well. Fortunately, Harrison Butker's words are masked just enough that they won't be weaponized and aren't weaponized, are not tools of hatred that most LGBTQ plus kids will feel targeted by. Harrison Butker and men like Harrison Butker never have to celebrate overcoming any of that to be who they are as an adult. Yes, he's had to work out a lot and had to win scholarships and places on football teams, and he gets feted for that. There are parades. He's been in 3 of them, celebrating his accomplishments. But they weren't accomplishments that overcame anything he was born with or innate to him. So, I mean, I try to sometimes give a pass to those who just are, and I use the term ignorant, not as a weaponized word, but some people just are blissfully ignorant. Harrison Butker has no idea why people celebrate Pride Month. And good for him that he doesn't have to know. But he should, as a human being, as a loving Christian, you would think, be empathetic, be able to listen and consider. Or he could just give a commencement speech at a Catholic school with 485 graduates listening and rail against it without giving it another thought, which it seems he has. However, he's not done.
Reading that article now shared all over the world, we see that in the complete surrender of self and a turning towards Christ, you will find happiness. Right here in a little town in Kansas, we find many inspiring lay people using their talents. President Minnis, Dr. Swafford, and Dr. Zimmerer are a few great examples right here on this very campus that will keep the light of Christ burning bright for generations to come. Being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find true happiness and peace in this life. It is essential that we focus on our own state in life, whether that be as a layperson, a priest, or religious. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives.
Oh, here we go.
Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In the small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment.
There you go.
You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation.
And her vocation is for him, his wife and mother to his children. Then again, he makes a lot of money, so they can make that decision. Dude signed a 5-year, $20.275 million contract, which included a $3.5 million signing bonus, $9,100,000 guaranteed, an average annual salary of $4,055,000. I mean, if I could stay home and have children and raise them with that kind of money, yeah, okay, fine. And I get to be married to a handsome NFL kicker? Sure. And listen, I kind of get what he's trying to do here. He's trying to praise his wife for supporting him and being there for him and enabling him to have the career he does while she takes care of the family at home because, you know, he's got to work in Kansas City and they're not necessarily going to live everywhere he plays, right? Because they play half their games on the road. By the way, Isabel, formerly Isabel Tirani, earned degrees in computer science, according to Heavy.com, and Spanish from Rhodes College, where she played on the basketball team. During an appearance on the Unraveled podcast in 2022, Isabel described herself as, quote, an independent person before reconnecting with Harrison Butker in college and committing to Catholicism. They have 2 kids together. Back to his, speaking of her and her role and the woman's role in their life, at home or career-wise?
I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school
This is sweet.
would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
And that's great. That's her choice, right? fine. That's her choice. Fantastic. And loving. I like this. This is nice. However,
she's the primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life.
it would also help to have a $4,055,000 annual salary coming to you so that you could pull that off. But okay, whatever.
Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true. But if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal. Heterodox ideas abound even within Catholic circles, for let's be honest, there is nothing good about playing God with having children, whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive. No matter how you spin it, there is nothing natural about Catholic birth control. It is only in the past few years that I have grown encouraged to speak more boldly and directly, because as I mentioned earlier, I have leaned into my vocation as a husband and father and as a man.
Again, from a point of privilege, it's easy for him to talk about birth control or choosing how many kids to have or when to have them or if to have them because he is a man. And his vocation, the one that makes him $4,055,000 a year playing a sport, isn't going to be impacted if he and his wife, Isabel, have more children. Decide to, no, you can't even say decide to. You can't just say decide to because his belief is that it's God's will. If as a married couple, they're going to conjoin and copulate and let the fates happen what'll happen, right? That's easy for them to do. And listen, I'm happy for her. I'm happy for him. I really am. I am incredibly happy for them that his athletic success, not his computer science degree. It was a computer science degree from Georgia Tech. No, it's him playing a sport. And not even not even the brutal position in the sport. I mean, yeah, he can get hit, but he doesn't have to train to take the crushing blows like the teammates on the line do. Like Travis Kelce, the tight end who he cited Travis's girlfriend Taylor Swift's lyrics in. I mean, he's literally just even in his work role, he's coming from a point of privilege among the least hit, the least touched players on an NFL football team, and he makes $4,055,000 a year because he's really good at what he does. Okay, listen, that's his money; he has earned it. But to sit here and talk about and admonish those who want to take up the task of, air quote, family planning instead of, well, family planning is God's will. And if the wifey and I decide to bow wow and 9 months later it's God's will that there's a child, then just do it. This is where, and again, I go back and I point to where polling shows that even a majority of American Catholics kind of believe in some sort of family planning. Why is Elizabeth Moss, by the way, on an FX series promo, like she's been working on that and not The Handmaid's Tale? This is very much reminding me of The Handmaid's Tale. Sorry, I apologize. More from Butker.
To the gentleman here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in.
Who, by the way, has ever said that there is no place for men in the home life, the family life, or societally? Is this a swipe at DEI too?
This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well.
You could also point to the United States having absentee fatherism steeped in a long and storied history of over-policing for the marginalized, for disparate outcomes in the judiciary as a result. I mean, the degradation of the American family is not simply a moral one from the standpoint that I think that he's thinking. And by the way, it's not even a black problem anymore. We see the rates of unwed or out of wedlock birth rates. They've been soaring since the 1960s. It was 24% of black infants and 3% white infants. And 1990, it was up to 64% for black infants, 18% for white infants. But the moral question has a lot to do with America's history. I mean, we literally had enslaved people until the mid-1860s. We were literally splitting families up and sending them off to different areas of the county, state, or even country back then. And then we've had hiring biases that have made it hard for black men to be successful, to raise a family. So many of them would have to hit the road. Remember James Evans from Good Times? He had to go to Alaska, right? And that's where he died. I know it's fictitious, but still, he had to hit the road to go make ends meet for his family. And also women who don't now feel tethered to a man just because he would be the father of their child or children if he is, for example, abusive or doesn't provide or both, or just wasn't a good fit just because they got knocked up when they were in their teens. These things happen. A few more thoughts on Butker and his commencement speech when the Ron Show returns on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, wherever you podcast. So we're in the home stretch, and I've got show notes. In fact, today's show notes will probably just be a link to Harrison Butker's commencement speech at Benedictine College. Easy day for me. So we're also in the home stretch of his commencement speech, and metrosexuals, you're not immune from his list either here. Let's take a listen to him talking about masculinity.
Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better. I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing, society is shifting, and people, young and old, are embracing tradition. Not only has it been my vocation that has helped me and those closest to me, but not surprising to many of you, should be my outspoken embrace of the traditional Latin Mass. I've been very vocal in my love and devotion to the TLM and its necessity for our lives. But what I think gets misunderstood is that people who attend the TLM do so out of pride or preference. I can speak to my own experience, but for most people I have come across within these communities, this simply is not true. I do not attend the TLM because I think I am better than others, or for the smells and bells, or even for the love of Latin. I attend the TLM because I believe, just as the God of the Old Testament was pretty particular in how he wanted to be worshiped, the same holds true for us today. It is through the TLM that I encountered order and began to pursue it in my own life. Aside from the TLM itself, too many of our sacred traditions have been relegated to things of the past, when in my parish, things such as Ember Days, days when we fast and pray for vocations and for our priests, are still adhered to. The TLM is so essential that I would challenge each of you to pick a place to move where it is readily available. A lot of people have complaints about the parish or the community, but we should not sacrifice the Mass for community. I prioritize the TLM even if the parish isn't beautiful, the priest isn't great, or the community isn't amazing. I still go to the TLM because I believe the holy sacrifice of the Mass is more important than anything else. I say this knowing full well that when each of you rekindle your knowledge and adherence to many of the Church's greatest traditions, you will see how much more colorful and alive your life can and should be. As you move on from this place and enter into the world, know that you will face many challenges. Sadly, I'm sure many of you know of the countless stories of good and active members of this community who, after graduation and moving away from the Benedictine bubble, have ended up moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend prior to marriage. Some even leave the church and abandon God. It is always heartbreaking to hear these stories, and there is a desire to know what happened and what went wrong. What you must remember is that life is about doing the small things well, setting yourself up for success, and surrounding yourself with people who continually push you to be the best version of you. I say this all the time, that iron sharpens iron. It's a great reminder that those closest to us should be making us better. If you are dating someone who doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint? If your friend group is filled with people who only think about what you're doing next weekend and are not willing to have those difficult conversations, how can they help sharpen you?
I bet you he has fun at barbecues.
As you prepare to enter into the workforce, it is extremely important that you actually think about the places you are moving to. Who is the bishop? What kind of parishes are there? Do they offer the TLM and have priests who embrace their priestly vocation? Cost of living must not be the only arbiter of your choices, for a life without God is not a life at all, and the cost of salvation is worth more than any career. I'm excited for the future, and I pray that something I have said will resonate as you move on to the next chapter of your life. Never be afraid to profess the one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church, for this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace. I know that my message today had a little less fluff than is expected for these speeches, but I believe that this audience and this venue is the best place to speak openly and honestly about who we are and where we all want to go, which is heaven. I thank God for Benedictine College and for the example it provides to the world. I thank God for men like President Minnis who are doing their part for the kingdom. Come to find out, you can have an authentically Catholic college and a thriving football program.
Is that a dig at Duke University? Notre Dame?
Make no mistake, you are entering into mission territory in a post-God world, but you were made for this, and with God by your side and a constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you too can be a saint. Christ is King to the heights.
So that's Harrison Butker wrapping up his 20-minute commencement speech. I gave you a good chunk of that. I think I maybe took 3 or 4 minutes out because it got a little wonky into the Catholic dogma early on. Nonetheless, folks are reacting to the misogynistic stuff, the anti-Jewish swipe. Even, I mean, he may not interpret what he said as that, but a lot of Jewish Americans did. The pride swipe, the swipe at President Biden being a Catholic and pro-choice, which again, as I've pointed out in studies and polls that have been done, most Catholic Americans actually side with President Biden and not with Harrison Butker. But at the end of the day, listen, liberals, progressives, those of us who are non-theist or atheist or agnostic, I would also caution you against just going absolutely ape bonkers on social media, trying to drag him, or the predilection to cancel, or pursuing the NFL or the Kansas City Chiefs to admonish or punish or cut. No, listen. We're all made differently. We all have different beliefs and values. And at the end of the day, Harrison Butker, handsome Harrison, he is handsome, from Westminster Schools here in Atlanta, a Georgia Tech grad, and I had his degree wrong, engineering, by the way. He was giving a commencement speech at a small Catholic college outside of Wichita, Kansas. And the speech he gave, I guess, was to be expected at the venue he gave it. And that's that. Don't have to agree with it. Vehemently opposed to it. Speak out against it. That is your right. That is my right. That is what we should do. That is what I did. You can hear it again. Replay on the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, 5 to 6 p.m. We air first weekdays, 9 to 10 a.m. And on demand all day at ProgressiveVoices.com and then via podcast as well. Show notes at RonShowATL.com. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.